so I'm not gonna do that. That was it.
At least you're honest.
Yeah. Oh, he,
I'm waiting
I
for
don't understand.
that car to climb across.
And of course, that was, yeah, like, scientific.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We call to order this meeting of the Town Council. The first item of business is announcements. Does anyone have an announcement that needs to be made? Just say the fire department was busy today, and as a result of their skills, they were able to turn what could have been difficult automobile accidents into less so. We're grateful for their work in that regard. If there are no other announcements, approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes of April 6, 2023, unless, as written, unless anybody has questions, comments on them.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion on that. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thanks. Department head reports. We have a report from the police department.
Motion to place the police department report for March 2023 on file, unless anybody has any questions or comments on that.
Second.
Discussion on that. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The next item of business is old business, and the first of those is a request from Jim Locke to provide an update on the school solar project. He is, as he's coming up forward, he has provided a handout, which I've given to each of the counselors as well as to the,
So you guys have this?
we do have that, yeah,
All right, good.
the one pager that you handed me this morning, or this afternoon.
So best I can tell, we are rounding second base and moving into third base on this. But unlike the Red Sox, I think there's a real chance we'll make it home. So yesterday, the school committee voted unanimously, as this thing points out, to support the solar initiative on their school roof. And perhaps more importantly, they also voted to make available a $15,000 deposit to Newport Renewables, pending approval of certain approvals to put panels on the solar roof. The reason that that's important is that Newport Renewables, the company, needs to do a significant amount of analysis in order to find out whether or not this project will work. They need to look at the roof. They need to provide an engineering analysis. And in order to do that, they would like a deposit on their $500,000 eventual cost. And the school committee would be willing to put that money up as a sign of how important they think this is. So what I've listed next is a series of proposed next steps in order to try to get this done in a timely fashion. There's a number of reasons why time is of a non-trivial importance here. The first thing is that, as some of you may know, there is a requirement that solar panels within a certain distance of Pikes Peak be approved by, and I have to tell you, counselors, I don't really know the name of the committee.
Zoning board.
It's a zoning
The
board.
zoning board.
Yeah.
So the zoning board needs to approve solar panels within a certain distance of Pikes Peak, and obviously the school is within that distance.
And they do that by applying for a variance.
And they do that by, that's right. So that variance, I think, is probably the first step that needs to happen. In the absence of that variance, not very much will be able to be accomplished. Second of all, I'd like to, for the town administrator to be authorized to begin working with Newport Renewables in order to get the engineering assessments and the plans for the solar array. The plans for the solar array is important because $100,000 in rebates from the Department of Education will depend on approval of those engineering plans. So John McNamee needs those plans relatively soon in order to get that $100,000 of rebate. I would also like to ask that the town solicitor, the new town solicitor, I'm sorry that I'm dumping on you, or am I the first person who's been dumping on you from this
My
town?
goodness, no.
I'm shocked,
Get in line.
shocked.
He's taking it from all sides.
But he looks like he can handle it. For the town solicitor to review and recommend options for maximizing solar on the roof. There are 6 or 7 different ways in which the town can maximize the number of panels on the school roof and still stay within the contract requirements of the Warren contract, and also within the requirements of keeping the town as a eligible net metering system. I'm quite sure that that's something that a solicitor would need to get involved in. And then I'd like the town to articulate an expected completion date of sometime in the middle of May in order for these activities, in order to be pretty well outlined in time for the financial town meeting. I think the more information the financial town meeting has available to it, the more educated the town voters will be deciding whether or not to front the money for this. So those are my proposals for the next steps for the town council. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Bob, is there any approvals that we need to do here? Any motions that we need to make? I mean, he
Yes, I
wants,
think.
he wants us to authorize the town administrator to begin working with NEPTRI on this, so.
Yep. We need to decide who it is that's going to seek the approval for the variance. We need to decide, the administrator needs to have authority to begin discussions. And then we need this review that's requested by Mr. Locke for the solicitor to advise us on options to maximize the number of panels. But that'll, I think, further downstream. Would you agree?
Yes, but it is by some distance the most important financial consideration.
Fair enough. Okay.
Should the solicitor advise us on who should be seeking the variance? Can we figure that?
I
Actually,
think he's trying to,
actually, two points. I'm looking at section 14-514 of your zoning ordinance, and subsection E4 has historically critical areas. Any solar system to be located, a solar energy system to be located within a 1,500 feet radius of Pikes Peak, also known as Plat 20 Lot 4A, requires a special use permit by the zoning board and major plan review by the planning board. Is this that lot? Okay. So if, to hit your timeline, planning board meets, that's May 2nd. An application is going to have to be filed like now so that the planning board can review it prior to it going to the zoning board. That's the first thing. The second thing is because this is a school building, the applicant should be the school department.
I'm quite sure they would be willing to do that. I will talk to Lori tomorrow, but I discussed it briefly with John McNamee. And I think you're right, by the way. I think it should come from the school committee.
So should the school department go and apply online for a variance to go to the planning board
I
first?
misspoke in quoting from here. The ordinance requires a special use permit. That's what they, that's
But
what
to get the ball rolling, so it gets in front of the planning board, because it's got to go to the planning board for the zoning, should the school, somebody contact the school, the town administrator?
Actually, I think my recommendation would be to move that the town administrator coordinate with the school department to have the application filed for the planning board and the zoning board
Simultaneously.
simultaneously. Actually, the same application, but you have to file one with the planning board and one with the zoning board. That should be coordinated by your town administrator, but the applicant would be the school department.
Would you like a motion for that?
Yes.
I was going to just make that as the motion, what you just said, because I can see Heather writing it down. That would be my motion. whatever.
Well, I have motion to, based on what Tony said.
Right.
motion to Authorize town administrator to coordinate with the school department to start working with the planning, then to the zoning.
I'll second it.
And that motion is to submit a special use permit for the purpose of installing solar on the roof of the school.
That's correct, yes.
Do we have a rendering or any kind of plan that can be submitted with
Yes,
the application?
absolutely.
Great.
Just as a point, the vast majority of the solar panels will be on the flat part of the school roof and can't be seen from the street. But some panels hopefully will be on the roof over the gym. But they will be very difficult to see because they'll be square just like the gym, and the gym's roof is dark.
No, I'm just saying
But the
that,
answer
because
is
to have
yes.
the application complete, they'll want something to
The
see.
answer is yes.
Just to be clear, we're accelerating this in order to take advantage of the fact that we're going to assemble the people on May 24th. We're backing up from that date to say we have a special town meeting on that same date. And at that town meeting, we're expecting to present what it is we're talking about here. But we don't know yet that we don't have a plan. We're not ready yet to show that. We will be, obviously, by then. But these are the kinds of things that we're voting to do tonight to initiate.
Also, I think to go with your timeline, Bob, is the school committee is going to have to vote to be the applicant. And their next meeting is May 17th. Obviously, they can call a special meeting. I don't think the superintendent can just be the applicant without a vote from the school committee.
I'm not sure that that's true because they discussed being the applicant, but I'm not sure they had the vote. So I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I wasn't at the meeting last night. Did they vote to be the applicant to the zoning and planning board?
They made their,
I know it says to support. I was going to ask what that means.
so they expect, to be honest, their $15,000 commitment to do this is contingent on approval by the zoning board.
Yeah, they mentioned that they're going to be the applicant.
That I don't know.
Council, do they need to take a vote to be the applicant?
For authorization, yes. What I'd like to do is see what the motion was at their meeting.
If I may, I have that here, actually. The specific motion was to approve participating in and possibly contributing, excuse me, a deposit of $15,000 to Newport Renewables to the photovoltaic solar project under consideration by the town. So it was for participating in and contributing the deposit towards the engineering work.
If you read John, if you read the preamble to that, it specifically mentions approvals, as I recall.
Yeah, well, approve participating in.
I don't think that language is sufficient. I mean, that's from being on the school committee for 7+ years. I don't think. I'm not a lawyer, though.
Well, here's the thing. Ultimately, that's going to be up to the school committee as to whether or not they thought they did what they did. But because of the press of time, we'll have work with Tony to make sure that the necessary paperwork is prepared. They have a short window, and if they need to meet again, they're going to have to keep with your timeline.
If I may, Mr. President, I think we're missing a couple of things here. One is a letter was forwarded to them that they were the approved party. However, we've never signed an agreement, so an agreement's going to need to be signed, the deposit made of the 15,000 before we proceed. I mean, we can simultaneously address some of these things, but I think those two pieces are key points that need to be. Now, with that being said, if I'm hearing it correct, then the school department is be signing off on this agreement with Newport Renewables, or will it be the town?
My understanding is that what the school agreed to do is to allow panels to be put on their building. But the agreement for what kind of panels and what they look like and where the money comes from, I think comes from the town. And that's what the purpose of the town financial meeting is, to approve the capital expenditures. So Tony told me last week that if the school didn't agree to let panels put on their building, nothing was going to happen. And that's a completely reasonable position for him to have taken. And that's why I went to the school committee yesterday and they agreed to allow panels, but put on their building.
But of course, they don't know where they are yet because they haven't been designed. The layout hasn't been designed. So we're
I mean,
out ahead
they
of.
have an idea, but you're absolutely right. There's some imprecision.
So perhaps we also need an agreement with the school, between the town and the school.
I don't know that yet. That's possible that we would, but I think at this point, we can be directive in nature,
Okay.
and say what we want to have done, and then have people come back and say, I can't do this without something.
Okay.
Excuse me, and I beg your pardon for not knowing this, but we just asked Tony, this building is titled to the town of Little Compton.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. But the town has, the school department has the maintenance,
Care and custody.
care and custody building.
Right.
So I think that as the approvals are going on, to meet this timeline, perhaps there should be agreements on this to make sure that everybody knows what everybody else is doing. So while we're preparing the applications, if you want, I'll work with the administrator on making sure that the necessary agreements are had with the school department so that it's clear as to this, the panels going on, who has the responsibility for them and everything else.
We have a motion. We don't have a second, though.
We have a second.
Yeah, Paul seconded.
There's a motion made and seconded.
Can you read it? Can you read it
I'm
again?
not sure that it's comprehensive enough. Go ahead.
Motion to authorize the town administrator to coordinate with the school department to start working with the planning board for a special use permit to install solar panels on the school.
And you're probably going to need a second motion
Uh,
to put into place an agreement between the town and the school.
We can amend that motion or just take it off.
Why don't we move that motion, vote on that, and then we'll make a second motion.
Fine. That motion then is made by Counselor Mataronis and seconded by Counselor Golembeski, if I got that right.
Yes.
Is there further discussion on that? All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, would you like to frame a second motion?
I assume it would probably be you that would come up with some kind of agreement, not you, Bob, the solicitor, with some kind of agreement between the school and the town.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that you,
Draft an agreement with the school department for the installation of the solar panels on the school building.
I'll second that with a caveat that a lot of times when the school department and the council have discussions about property that belongs to the town or school, feathers get ruffled. I just want it clear that this is not the council trying to usurp any authority away from the school department. This is just trying to get this project to go forward, which they've already agreed to. So I just want that specificity in any agreement. Look, we're not trying to take anything from you. We're trying to do this for the whole town, including the school.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I think that's a very good observation.
The motion that has been made and seconded describing the solicitor's role in bringing this to fruition with the school department. Is there any further discussion?
Just quickly, the first motion was to have the school be the applicant to the zoning and planning board. Am I correct?
Yes.
So they're going to have to meet to do that. Do you agree with that, solicitor?
If the motion that they have didn't already accomplish that, yes.
Just want to be clear.
well, if the town owns that building, shouldn't the town be the person that applies for the applicant?
Oh, it's, when you have a zoning application, there's two things, there's the owner and applicant. And I think because the school has care and custody of the
Okay.
building, they have to be the applicant. That's the reason I said that.
Okay.
Any further discussion on that motion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thanks for your work on getting this
Thank
this
you, Jim.
far.
Thank you.
Thank all of you very much.
The next item of old business is a request from Peg Bugara for an update on short-term rental regulations. Is Peg with us this evening? Don't see her. No. Her question is in essence, I requested, she speaks of the fact that short-term rentals have not been dealt with an ordinance. And that's frankly because we have, if you recall, had a fairly open and fruitful public hearing on the ordinance and discovered there's lots of avenues and lots of aspects to short-term rentals that need to be accommodated. And frankly, we have not worked that further. Rather, we have been working toward the budget preparations for next year. So that's the reason this hasn't come back to the council yet for another public hearing. We haven't solved resolving those differences so that people who own short-term rentals under certain circumstances can continue to do so, and those who are doing so as absentee landlords perhaps have a different one. But even that, frankly, is under some scrutiny at various levels. So it's not going to be a quick fix that we can say, good, we've got this piece and this piece, let's put them together and we'll have ourselves an ordinance. So that's the reason it has been slower than some would like. She asks a specific question regarding information that she says is in the Plymouth land grant acres restrictions. And I asked the solicitor to look at this with me and would ask that he speak to the fact that she's called out this Plymouth land grant acre restrictions.
That's correct, and the clerk was kind enough to send me the relevant deed references. What Ms. Bugara is citing is a deeded private restriction on the property. That means that the town does not have the legal authority to enforce any of these restrictions. The restrictions, to the extent that they're still valid, and you got to take a look at the root of title statute, which I'm not going to get into because it's going to take too long. But the enforcement would go to other owners in this plat, as opposed to the town of Little Compton.
In the body of her letter, she said, however, I requested information at the town council regarding the Plymouth land grant acres restrictions and renting houses in this area is against the restrictions. I've looked up some of the restrictions and she has some in her letter, and I don't see in her letter where there's any restrictions against rentals. That's why I was hoping she was here so she could point out where that's coming from, but I don't see it in here.
I think what she was referring to was the fact that it says residential use only.
Right.
So the question becomes, if somebody rents out their property, is that a residential use? But again, that's not for the town, it would be for the homeowners, but I agree with you. There is nothing in there restricting any rentals.
Right.
At all.
I have a couple observations. I dusted off my short-term rental folder from October of last year. And what I find in here is our second revision of our draft for an ordinance. I have it here that we were going over. And I also have a letter from Mike Steers in his comments on short-term rentals. I just read those quickly again. I asked the solicitor, is it generally that towns will go to the planning board or the zoning board? I think it's the planning board first for a draft of an ordinance for something like this.
Well, you know, I got to tell you, towns split on that, actually. If the town, a town is going to attempt to regulate short-term rentals in the zoning ordinance, then under the State Enabling Act, the planning board has to review the ordinance to see whether or not it conforms with the comprehensive plan and give the town council an advisory opinion. I can tell you that there's some towns that have taken a different approach and are not regulating short-term rentals through the zoning ordinance, but rather in their code. The question then becomes whether or not they have the authority to do it. There's legislation pending in the General Assembly to clarify that, along with about 12 or 15 other bills on short-term rentals right now.
So there's two ways a town can do it. The first one that you just said, to get an advisory opinion from your zoning board for an ordinance.
Typically, no, it would not be the zoning board. Under the Zoning Enabling Act,
Planning board.
it's the planning board that gives the recommendation.
Okay. And the second thing is for the town council to change their code or go their code. Is that
There
right?
is, but I gotta tell you, frankly, I don't recommend that.
Okay.
I think that cities and towns have the authority now, under the Zoning Enabling Act, to enact those types of regulations, and other communities have utilized that, the zoning ordinance. Some haven't, but most have. That'd be my recommendation based on my experience with short-term rental ordinances.
Would you recommend that we send this to the planning board for their advisory opinion?
I haven't seen the proposal. Is it to amend the zoning ordinance?
It was, and I was the one that crafted the first resolution for it. And after that meeting, the first meeting we had where everybody came, it seemed like there was a whole different perspective on what short-term rental they wanted in whatever we were going to do. I think we were going to do it through zoning. So I crafted another one, and that second meeting, there was probably 50 to 60 people in the audience, and 90% of them didn't want any kind of short-term rental restrictions. So at that juncture, we kind of left it. Speaking with Tony, he said there is all kinds of legislation being heard at the State House. So it'd be my thought, why don't we wait to see what the legislature comes down from the state rather than going forward with this, and then have the state supersede us and say, no, you can't do that. Why don't we see what they've got to say, and then have another crack at this when that's done. I think the legislature is going to be over within 6 or 7 weeks. So they should, whether they'll have anything accomplished by then or not, but I mean, we were trying to do this ourselves through, because it came, there were some people that were getting annoyed by noise after 10 o'clock. So I think the way we told those people, well, you're gonna have to call up the police officers, and we have a noise ordinance, so it's supposed to be under so many decibels after 9 o'clock, I believe. If these people are breaking it, those rules, then they're gonna have to get summonsed, and after so many of these times, and that house shouldn't be allowed to be a short-term rental anymore.
I have to agree with Gary on waiting, and his secondary subject about the enforcement, because affordable housing is another piece of this puzzle. They're thinking about making a lot of these short-term rentals by right, which could throw a monkey wrench into anything we try and create to control them. I think we have to take a wait-and-see approach. That's my 2 cents.
My only thought is if we send it to the planning board and they look at the comprehensive plan and they give us a detailed assessment, and I don't think that hurts anything. I mean, we'll have it. Doesn't mean that we have to adopt it or vote on it, but we'll have that, and we'll have the legislators, what they've done, 7 weeks. We'll have all our information. I'll make a motion to send the short-term rental to the planning board for their advisory opinion.
Second?
Now, just to define, what is it that you mean by the short-term rentals to the planning board? In other words,
I'll let the lawyers speak for me on that. What do I mean by that?
Well, I actually am going to make a further suggestion.
Oh, go ahead.
Under the Zoning Enabling Act, it has to be that the ordinance is introduced and not a draft. I think if you send a draft out to the planning board and they review it, and then changes are made, it's going to have to go back through the process again. So I think the best approach by the Zoning Enabling Act would be to make sure that you have your finished product to go to the planning board so that they can make their recommendations on that draft, rather than, not draft, but actually the ordinance itself, rather than a draft. That could confuse things.
So it does, so the short-term rental ordinance starts with the council then? Doesn't start with the planning board?
And
No, it
that's
doesn't.
what, that's what we were doing. We were gonna try to vet it, come out with what we thought the general public wanted, and then give it to the planning board for their observations of it,
Okay.
and then come back
And
to
then we
what
go to
you,
the zoning board.
Yeah,
Right.
under the Zoning Enabling Act, the ordinance is introduced for an amendment to the zoning ordinance. That's not local, it's a state requirement. The ordinance is introduced, it's immediately referred to the planning board for their recommendation. Then it comes back to the planning board for a public hearing, not under the local requirements, but state requirements for the public hearing on that, so that the zoning ordinance can be amended. So that's what I was referring to on this. Rather than saying, give us your comments on it, it would be, here's the ordinance, take a look at it, does it comply with the comprehensive plan? And they would make a recommendation. It comes back to the town council for a public hearing on that. It isn't a situation where you'd be saying, look, what are your thoughts on the short-term rentals, and go from there. And I'm sorry for the confusion, but that's what I was referring to.
Okay, so we don't have one that's voted on yet. We just have a draft. So I'll withdraw my motion.
Then I'll make a motion that we revisit the short-term rental ordinance after the conclusion of the 2023 Rhode Island legislative session.
I'll second that.
The motion before us is to review and revise the draft short-term rental ordinance that we send to the planning board after the completion of the legislative session, and then begin the process. Is there any further discussion?
I would, once that's done, I agree with that motion. Once that's done, if the solicitor could keep us abreast of what legislation came down or was approved about short-term rentals, and forward it to the town solicitor so the council can be working on this.
We have multiple ways of tracking legislation, and we'll use them all. Yes, sir.
Motion's
The
made and
motion,
seconded.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item of business is a letter from Victoria Talbot expressing ongoing Adamsville pedestrian safety concerns. She has met with the police chief, who has reported that on Wednesday, April 12th, he met with Ms. Talbot regarding the possible safety issues, and she was able to express her concerns for pedestrian safety, and they've put a plan in place to increase safety in the area for both pedestrian and motor vehicle traffic. I'll be making a request, that is the chief, to the State Traffic Commission for additional signage, in hopes this will increase safety in the area, and I will update the council as to the results. So action has been taken on this. He is going to the State Traffic Commission with a proposal for signage, and we'll see what difference that makes in the area.
All right, motion to place on file on?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to place this on file. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item of old business is a request from Paul Clifford, who has advised me that he is not able to attend this evening, that the council reconsider its opposition to offshore wind turbines. Gary?
Seeing this, Morris Shaw was the one that produced the resolution, and there was probably 10 or 12 people that spoke in support of the resolution. And I think Jim, Paul Clifford is pro-wind, so he kind of wrote a derogatory letter that mentioned Morris Shaw's name in Green Oceans, and she called me up and said she'd like to read a statement. I'm not sure it's in rebuttal of that, but I kind of agree with her that, you know, attacking somebody because they have a viewpoint isn't the right way to do it, especially in Little Compton. We can agree to disagree about things, but not to make personal attacks. So if you'd like to read your statement or say anything.
Just before you do that, just to be clear, Clifford wrote something derogatory about this young lady? I don't
Yeah, it's
remember
right
reading that.
on where it says, "Dear Paul, Bob, Paul, Gary, Andrew, and Patrick."
Yeah,
And it
Oh, I
says that the town council felt hook, line, and sinker on, for her pitch. And then he questions her veracity with her pitch and hope we call Mrs. Shore and Green Oceans back to town council, explain why they misled our town. Well, then she misled all the other 12 people that were in here, and I don't think, one of them was my son. It's going to be pretty hard to mislead him, I can tell you that. His livelihood is on the ocean. And one thing I did say at that meeting is, what is going to happen to these windmills after 15 years? They're going to be derelicts out there because the only people making money on them are the people installing them. So they haven't proven that offshore wind, in this country anyways, offshore wind is the right solution. If they want to put them on land where they can service them, I don't have a problem with that. But I don't want to see thousands of derelict windmills out there. So
so Gary, I'm just, from what you just mentioned there, I really didn't catch that. I mean, I read it, but I didn't
Okay.
catch it. But I think this is Paul Clifford's opinion. Opinions aren't fact. Maura Shaw spoke, she had an opinion. Her opinion is not fact. I don't think a town council meeting should be about, listening to people's grievances against each other. I mean, you spoke, we heard what you said. This gentleman's speaking, I've heard what he said, that's opinion. They're not fact. So, I mean, I'm not gonna stop you from reading whatever you want to read. But,
did you read this report? It was written by students, and he's
I read
reading
his
this as
opinion.
gospel.
I read his opinion, and, I think it's a lot of noise on both sides. I think that fossil fuels obviously are gonna run out. I think we all can agree that, and we better have a plan for it. And I also believe, and it's my opinion, it's not fact, that wind turbines are gonna be on the coast of Little Compton. It's gonna happen. And, the 5 council people here need to make sure Little Compton is prepared for that. We've done that. We've hired an environmental attorney. We have a seat at the table. We are talking with Mayflower whenever we need to. And anything that moves forward with that, we're part of it. We've done that. So to hear both sides, I've gone to all the events. I've seen everything on YouTube. They're very passionate on both sides. It's opinion to me.
If somebody slanders your name, are you just going to say, "Oh, that's okay"? That's
No, I
fine."
mean, I just
I
saw
think he
that just
slandered
now.
her name. I think she has a right for rebuttal.
I have no problem with
Mara, why don't you just say it?
how
And then I want to
you
make a
want to
motion to
conduct
file
this
his
business.
letter.
That's fine.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm going to read a statement that I wrote because I'm extremely upset by Mr. Clifford's accusations. What he wrote in his letter, which is apparently now a part of the town's official record, is shocking to me. This is the first time in my life that I have been accused of lying or misleading anyone. And Mr. Clifford's baseless accusations were made in a public letter sent by someone I don't know to people I respect in my hometown. I've been a member of this community for 55 years, and I've built my reputation in this town on a daily basis with many hundreds of hours of volunteer work for various parts of the community, including the Secana Yacht Club, the Secana Preservation Association, the Little Compton Community Center, and the Rhode Island Nature Conservancy. During that time, I have interacted with many hundreds of citizens, families, legislators, academics, and educators. I am a lifelong environmentalist, and I am deeply concerned about the climate crisis. In all of the roles that I have held in this town, I have been called a lot of things, but this is the first time I have ever been called a liar. When I read Mr. Clifford's attack on me, I was stunned by his accusation that I misled the town and its officers. Not knowing what else to do, I reviewed the video of my statement in support of the resolution I proposed on April 6th to see if I had said anything that could have been misconstrued. But after reviewing the video of my statement and fact-checking every single thing I said, I stand by everything I said that day. Despite his accusations, Mr. Clifford does not point to anything I said that is either misleading or untrue. I do not know Mr. Clifford. He did not contact me before or after submitting his letter to you. He did not even have the courage to appear today to confront me personally with his smears and nonsense. Mr. Clifford's main accusation seems to me to be that the resolution I proposed was part of some larger plot on behalf of the oil industry. That is false. I drafted the resolution myself, patterning it after others I found in the town record, after a conversation I had with Town Councilor Gary Mataronis. While I was still trying to figure out what was going on with the wind complexes, I called Gary to see what he thought about them, whether he thought there was serious cause for concern, because he's a fisherman, he comes from a family of fishermen. After that conversation, I thought about what I could do to help the town take a position, since we are the closest to the wind complex and the place that will be most harmed when something goes wrong. I did not draft the resolution on behalf of anyone else, and no one besides me saw it or had anything to do with drafting it. I sent the resolution to Gary and asked the town council to consider it. That's all. However, I want to talk about Green Oceans for a moment, because Green Oceans is the other target of Mr. Clifford's smear. Green Oceans is nothing more than a handful of Little Compton citizens like me who have been getting together over Zoom on a more or less weekly basis since January to share information and concerns, to try to figure out how damaging this wind complex is likely to be for our town and what, if anything, we can do about it. We don't all agree on what is most worrying about the projects, and we don't all agree about what to do. The group is not funded by anybody at all. It has taken 0 donations from anyone, and it has no budget. It is the very definition of a grassroots community organization. It is named Green Oceans because we thought if we named ourselves something, when we asked questions or made comments in the public commentary at CRMC or BOEM, they might listen to us more than if we signed our comments Mara and Charlotte and Greg and Doug and Lisa and David and Bill. That's all. If the goal of calling the group Green Oceans was to get people to pay attention to our questions, it seems to be working. People who feel threatened by anyone who questions the risks and benefits of the proposed wind complexes seem to be paying attention. I spent the day today at a marine law symposium on offshore wind at Roger Williams University, because when I am concerned about an issue, my approach is to find out as much as I can and try to understand different perspectives. It was eye-opening. I can report that, just like you, the regulators and scientists at the symposium are themselves worried about irreversible harms resulting from these enormous wind complexes. They are overwhelmed because they don't know what is going to happen when we put in this many turbines of this size, because it has literally never been done before on planet Earth. They are concerned because we don't have the regulatory frameworks to manage the scale of these projects. They are worried about the polarization that Mr. Clifford's letter represents and the resulting absence of constructive engagement. They are worried that the genie can't be put back in the bottle. Despite the fact that the cost and benefits of these projects are legitimate concerns for both scientists and citizens, Eco Rhode Island, an environmental newsletter, has attacked Green Oceans in multiple articles with similar direct character assassinations and negligible research used by Mr. Clifford. A few weeks after the informal meeting hosted here in town by Michelle McGaugh, some students from Brown University published through the Eco Rhode Island website the unsigned report that Mr. Clifford attached to his letter. That document attempts to discredit a 1-page information sheet and a 6-page white paper that one member of the group wrote in her spare time. And now, unfortunately, I seem to have been made the target of this smear campaign. While I am a member of Green Oceans, such as it is, I want to make clear that the views of members of Green Oceans do not necessarily represent my own, and that my views do not necessarily represent the views of anyone else. I am also a member of the Nature Conservancy, Sakonnet Preservation, the Audubon Society, and the National Wildlife Federation, among others. But I don't agree with everything those organizations say, and what I say does not represent the views of those organizations. So I am not sure why I'm being called upon by a self-described professional strategic consultant, Mr. Clifford, to refute false allegations about documents that I did not write. Nevertheless, Dr. Lisa Knight, the author of the documents that the report maligns, has refuted the Brown report in a letter to the authors. It's long. If the town is interested, the town council is interested, I can ask Lisa to submit her response. But this is not about Lisa Knight's words or about Brown students' words about Lisa Knight's words. This is about my words and what I said to you on April 6th. My character and reputation that I have built over a lifetime of citizenship in this town has been maligned wrongly behind my back and with no substantiation whatsoever. I understand that Mr. Clifford's letter has been entered into the agenda in full, and that no matter how false it is, it will stand in the record unless it is expunged. Until this week, my record in this town has consisted of my marriage license, my dog licenses, my dump permits, some burn permits, the title to the little farmhouse that I purchased when I left my parents' home, and 35 years of good works. No speeding tickets. It's just not fair that someone can come from outside and make false accusations without having the courage to face me directly and have that libel stand in the public record. Accordingly, I respectfully request that you strike the text of the email Mr. Clifford sent and all of his references to me from the agenda. Thank you. Thank you.
What's your thought on striking anything? I don't think it's, once it's been entered into the public record.
Yeah, the difficulty is
First Amendment.
you know, the letter came in, it's a part of what you received, it's going to be filed. But I would note that now what was just submitted will also be part of the file. So there is a rebuttal to the allegations that were in that email. And I think that to the extent that there was issues there, your response is in there too.
Is there no way that you can say, Mr. Clifford submitted an email requesting that the town council review the resolution and
Well-
just take my name out of it?
Well, here's the thing. He's asking for a request, and I haven't heard that it's going to be acted on at all, unless there's going to be a motion for that. And I
If I
think,
understand it correctly, he asked you guys to read the report. Isn't that what he asked?
No, he asked us to reconsider our support.
it was a motion to reconsider. If there's no motion on it, I think that speaks volumes too.
We are the ones who adopted the resolution. I'm aware of none of the members has come to me to say, I believe I erred, or I want to withdraw that. It was a unanimous decision, as I recall, the motion. I'm not certain of that, but I believe it.
It was.
Thank you, Mara. I'm going to make a motion to place Mr. Clifford's letter and his report on file. No discussion.
Motion is made and seconded to place the letter and its enclosures on file. Yes.
Discussion.
My name is Tom Clemo. I live on John Dyer Road. Over the last almost 3 months, I have read at least a couple thousand pages of information pertaining to offshore wind in general and Revolution Wind in specific. It's really complex in terms of appreciating what are the downsides and upsides of offshore wind on our coast. And I just want to share that. I want to say specifically, Gary, I am very familiar with the documentation submitted by Ørsted and Eversource, and there has been information, and I'm not attributing it to anybody. I'm just saying there is information that has been dispersed with regard to, is it possible that we're going to see hundreds or thousands of derelict wind turbines offshore? And I can appreciate how ugly that would be. I can identify document submitted by Orsted and Eversource regarding the disposition of those towers. It is mandated that they have financial obligations to remove them. And I'd be happy to provide that information to the council to identify how you know that. I know the next meeting is the 4th. I'd like to present that information. But the considerations of offshore wind for our coast and the New England coast is really complex. There's lots of pieces. I had a conference call with Orsted today about some of these issues, not that one specific, and they would agree that there's lots of pieces. One of these Orsted people said, Tom, you probably read more in those documentations to BOEM than I have. I don't care to claim who's read more, but I think it is important for the town and the whole coastal area of this section of Rhode Island to be aware of the benefits and drawbacks of these projects. And there are significant benefits in terms of climate change. There's also significant benefits to our ratepayers, where if you followed some of the state laws that were passed last year, for example, the 100% Renewable by 2033 Act, it obliges the state to purchase renewable energy 100% within 10 years. We can produce it offshore. If we don't, ratepayers in Rhode Island have to buy it from somebody else who's making it. And I think it's important that the town consider what are the state laws. There's also the Act on Climate, but since those wind farms produce electricity, and there was in the last legislature, the 100% renewable by 2033, there are implications to the ratepayers to say, we don't want them off our shores. And Portsmouth is addressing, well, what about us? If Rhode Island says, don't bring it ashore, we don't want it, ratepayers in Rhode Island are gonna have to pay for it. And I only point this out because this is a really big matter that is, from my own experience, for the reading I've done, it's really complex. You got to read all the pieces and understand, well, what about this and what about that? So those are the 2 points. One, the regulations regarding decommissioning are very specific, and Orsted, for the organization representative, they have to be honest about that. They cannot tell the federal government that, oh, this is just what we're thinking. They have that obligation. So that's with regard to decommissioning. And the other matter is, if Rhode Island does not produce that power, Massachusetts or Connecticut or New York will, or it'll come from Maine, and we're going to have to buy it at a price premium, and it will affect our well-being in the state and our rate paying.
Thank you. I would just point out the focus of this particular discussion is the response to an allegation that was made regarding the sincerity and veracity of someone's comments. And this debate that you are describing does need to continue on, but it needs to continue in a way that is commensurate with what we've done tonight, not in a way that is accusatory or derogatory towards someone's position.
It has to be noticed.
I appreciate that distinction. I didn't address that. There was the reference to decommissioning, and I know a lot about that. Happy to share it, and I figure on the 4th, I can provide some more information to the town council.
Thank you.
I beg your pardon, may I ask a clarification on the motion? The filing of the email in question in the attachments, that includes the response that Mara had, which he just submitted to the town clerk?
I could make another motion to add that to a part of the record if you want, or however you just think it should be done.
I think so long as the intent of the motion was to include, because not only were comments made, but a written statement was submitted just now to the clerk.
Okay, so
I think that should
I'll,
be included to it.
okay, so I'm gonna amend my motion to place Mr. Clifford's letter and his report on file, and to enter Mrs. Shaw's statement into the record and to be on file.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to place both the matter before us and the response that's been submitted, both of those in writing on file. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is an email from Paul Clifford urging boldness and advocacy for a program to bury electric power and utility cables. I'm going to ask that we task the town administrator to return to a future meeting. We have just buried one cable coming across what is known as School Street, which is the street we're on right now. And so a span of maybe 30 feet. And we have a sense of what that cost, what that took to do. And at an appropriate time, if you'd bring back the synopsis of that or give it to us, that would enable us to, I think, to respond to this.
Just for the record, speaking as an electrical contractor, sir, that was.
What do you know? Go ahead.
I know, no. That was to bury a secondary line that feeds a building. Mr. Clifford's bold statement he's talking about is to bury primary lines. Just with all due respect to the attorneys present, just the legal fees dealing with going through people's properties, everything like that, is going to be in the multi-millions. And if you're going to come to me as a taxpayer and say, hey, I want you to pay me an extra $50,000 this year because we're burying all the pole lines, I'm going to be very upset. Sorry, sir.
That's not a problem.
Had to go
Not a
off on that
problem.
one.
Want to read that motion again, Bob? Your motion?
My motion is to place this, to ask the town administrator to return to a future meeting with the town hall lessons learned so that we can put some scale to this. I think
Second.
it was very adequately done by the electrician. Motion's made and seconded. Is there further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Our next item is new business. It's a letter of request from the police chief to reopen two separate application processes, one for a police officer position, the other for a part-time public safety dispatcher.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. A request from American Legion Post 37 to hold Memorial Day Parade and service on Monday, May 29th. at 10
Motion to
a.m.
approve.
Second, and get your marching shoes on.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next is a request, a letter of interest from Ronald Lucio to purchase town-owned lot 1/78. Is Mr. Lucio here with us? Not, okay. Just to be clear, this lot in question is one of 6 lots that share a boundary on West Main Road. They're all very small lots. Mr. Lucio owns 5 of them. He would like to purchase the 6th one. And that will create a rectangle of 2 by 2.
I talked to the tax assessor today about this, and Mr. Lucio seems to think the assessed value of that is $21,700, when in fact the tax assessor told me it was $108,000. Now, this is a 50 by 100 foot lot that the town owns. So you could put a house on it. I mean, they do it at Secana Point, so it's a buildable lot. So if he wants it for $21,700, I'll give you 25 for it.
26.
Yeah, right, no kidding. Oh, I mean, that's kind of ludicrous to sell a buildable lot for $21,700. So I'm not sure where he got
Well,
that
not
figure
only that, it'll
from.
have to go to a financial town meeting, you have to get voter approval, even if you're
Yeah,
gonna
'cause it's
consider
finan-
it,
Yeah, because
you
it's a
can't sell
finance.
town property.
Right.
So let me get it.
Housing.
Yeah, we could use that for affordable housing in the future. It's a piece of property we own.
Well, it has the same constraints for affordable housing you've just described for a house lot. That's what it can do is a small house, which is not what we're striving to do. But what's your pleasure with respect to this? Do you want to clarify with him the proposed cost? If we're going to do this economically, we need to have a special town meeting. We have to put this on the financial town meeting as an agenda item, so we need to add it to the warrant and to the agenda for the meeting. So there's some, like most things right now, there's some urgency to making a decision one way or the other.
So there's another gentleman that owns lots 76 and 77 to the south. Mr. Lucio owns lot 81, 80, and 79. The lot in question is lot 78. So if we say, yeah, okay, we'll sell it to him, what's the guy to the south going to say? Well, how come I didn't get a crack at it? So if we're going to start selling land in town, we should put a for sale sign out and take bids on it.
I personally, I think I'd make a motion to respond to his letter saying the town, Little Compton, is not interested in selling this lot at this time. And just leave it like that. Maybe maybe the solicitor could put a little bit more flowery term to it, but basically tell him thanks, but no thanks.
I think another thing that we gotta pay attention to, that if he starts mowing this and he does it for more than 15 years, he might be able to get it by, you can't take town property by adverse.
Adverse possession does not extend to government-owned property.
Okay. Well, that relies.
So hopefully he keeps mowing it.
So what is the motion?
What's the solicitor's thought on this? Any thought on this?
Well, you've got some difficulty, I think, just from the issue that you raised. If somebody comes forward and says, I'd like to purchase the property, it can only be done by the financial town meeting under
Right.
section 103 of the charter. But if you do that, what happens if someone else says, gee, I would have liked the opportunity to do it, so.
And then you get into a bidding war, and then
Yeah.
the price of the lot, what's it assessed at, and then, of course, assessment of value, it's an assessment. So if people start to get interested, the price immediately starts going up. I just think, well, thanks, but no, thanks for your interest, but we're not interested this time.
All right, I'll second your motion. Maybe this.
The motion, to be clear, is to respond to Mr. Lucio with a appreciation for his offer and declining to.
At the present time, the town's not interested in selling this piece of property.
Very well. That's the motion made and seconded. Do you have it, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item of business is a letter from the Planning Board requesting the council request the state consider removal of the requirement that a property be deed restricted in order to count toward the town's 10% affordable housing requirement. The chair of the planning board and I have had many a discussion on this. I think I understand him quite clearly, but if you want to, he's here if you have questions.
Mike, is there any deed restriction that you would want? I mean, you're talking about the 30-year deed restriction on affordable housing? Is that what we're discussing?
Correct. So when we had this, you or the council had requested that the planning board comment on the resolutions from Tiverton and Hopkinton. So we viewed this as an opportunity then to come back to this question. And so the planning board thinks that Little Compton really does a very good job with regard to taking care of many of its citizens. And so if you look at the state information, we have, I think I said, over 220 low to moderate income, severely challenged people and the town provides the services. The only reason that we only have 9 instead of 229 is because
The deed
properties are
restriction.
deed restricted, and the homeowners don't want to deed restrict their own property. So we had discussed with Rhode Island Housing on this subject, they said, well, when the state provides the money, shouldn't it be deed restricted? And we agreed totally. So, but there should be a distinction between whether the state finances the property or
Or a home.
private person does. So we were recommending that the council write a resolution suggesting that the limitation of deed restriction be to properties that are financed by the state or some government organization. Properties that are financed privately would count based on usage and the other qualifiers that the state has for affordable housing. And then Little Compton would create a running population of houses that qualified, and when one came out, another one would go in, and you'd have a moving total of properties that qualified. Then we could remove our focus or distraction of trying to get to 10% number and focus on the housing that we're really interested in, that the planning board has referred to as attainable housing, which is working toward some housing for seniors or workers and people that live in town or children that live in town.
Someone who doesn't take state or federal money, but owns the home, has a private mortgage, but it has the income levels to meet the affordable goal, should be counted without the restriction of a 30-year lock on the mortgage. But we would lose that number if they pass away or they or they move out or something changes in the status of the house.
But then we're thinking that someone's going to get a little older and qualify. So one's going to fall out and one's going to add in. And
In the lead on that.
And our as we know, our senior population is significant and
Well, not that I think a resolution will go very far with that, but I think it's a noble cause to write something to go that way. It can't hurt.
I have a question about the letter. You state Little Compton has approximately 304 LMI, which is low moderate income cost burden households, which far exceeds the 10% requirement. But what it's saying, you know what that means, right? What that number means. The 305.
The 305 households?
Yeah. That's 305 households that pay more than 30% of their income annually to housing costs and housing related costs.
So they would qualify if their property was deed restricted.
No, the point is that we need to get those, the point behind that stat is that they're paying way more money out of their annual income than they should be for their housing, which means that their burden is a lot higher than most people's.
Which is the primary qualifier for their property to be counted toward the 10%.
No, but they're not getting.
We don't get that because they're not deed restricted.
No. The deed restricted properties are required that people spend no more than 30% of their income based on the area mean income. So these people are not in affordable housing. They're in way more expensive housing than they can afford.
Well, okay, I guess I misunderstand the term severely cost burden to me.
Yeah, so that
someone whose income, the portion of their income toward paying for their household is greater than, the state has these requirements. And so if we have, so the number of severely cost burdened households.
Yeah, there are 305.
More than 50% of their income on housing, all right? So I don't see how, if they're paying more than 50% of their income on housing, that house would qualify with other benefits that we give them, would qualify as an affordable house. It would count toward our 10%.
I completely disagree.
Okay, well, then,
The point of that stat is that these are the people that need the help from us because they're paying more than 50% of their income towards their housing.
they are.
That's what it is. That's what
They
it
count as a household, don't they?
Yeah, they're a household. Yeah.
And that household does not count toward the 10%.
No, because they're getting, pardon my French, but they're getting screwed because they're paying more than 50% of their income towards their annual housing costs.
In the lowest,
That's not
in the
affordable.
lowest taxed town in the state.
And,
But
but
that-
isn't that the principal qualifier?
No, the principal qualifier is it with the capital A affordable housing, when it's deed restricted, there are requirements that the people that reside in that housing, there's an income requirement, which means that they can only make so much. I think it's 80% of the area mean income, and they can't be paying more than 30% of their income towards housing.
Correct. So it's 80% of the median income. They can't pay more than 30%.
Yeah.
These people are paying 50%.
Of their income.
Well, that's right. But you only, if you pay 30%, if you pay more than 30% of 80%, you qualify. In this case, we're paying 50%, and you're saying they don't qualify.
I'm saying that this stat is exactly why we need more affordable housing in town. This is 19% of our population is severely cost burdened.
So just quickly, is the goal to achieve our 10% or is the goal to get more affordable or attainable housing in town?
Well, there is a goal to take care of the citizens and provide housing for the citizens of Little Compton, as I view it.
What's available? Let's put the emotion to just aside for a second on both sides of the issue. If you qualify, if you're in an affordable home and you meet a criteria, you've got the 30-year lock and all that stuff, what benefits are given to you by the state or the town if you get that?
As the owner of the property?
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm asking out of ignorance. I'm not asking out of with an agenda here. What if you're an affordable, all right, you're in Little Compton, you're one of the 9 people who get affordable housing. You've got the 30-year lock, it's not over a certain percent of your income and all that stuff. Is there any other thing you get besides?
Attorney has that answer.
I do. What happens with the low to moderate income housing is each city and town has their medium income. And the deed restriction is the rent or the purchase price has to be 80% of the average. So what you get is a reduced rent, or if it's a purchase, it's at a reduced price. I can tell you that the relevant statute that we're talking about, 4553(3) subsection 9, there is 2 bills in the General Assembly right now which address this in part. And what the bills say is that if there is a subsidy other than that, a voucher payment or other payments, that should count towards a town's affordable housing stock, which is actually what I thought this is what this is. And that legislation, I think, stands a good chance of passing. And if that's the situation down here, that aside from the 9 low to moderate units that you have, that there are others that receive some type of a subsidy, you might want to consider a resolution for that.
My other point on this is that we're kind of flaunting that older citizens are able to stay in their homes, but I know for a fact that there are a lot of elder people in their homes today that are just barely hanging on there.
I'm not suggesting this is a solution to the needs of housing. I was, in the planning board, was simply trying to get out from under the constant criticism that Little Compton only has 9 units, which implies we're not taking care of our citizens, to me and to the rest of the board. And so in reading the numbers, that if we have a senior population or whoever makes up these numbers that are severely cost burdened, or the board's impression is that through the services of the town, when the wellness center, the community center, the Meals on Wheels, we are doing everything we can to support people who want to age in place in their own home. And so only in this category, in that their homes don't count, it sort of seems to have backfired on us. If we have the numbers all wrong and, we don't have these, then this was only a recommendation for a resolution to get recognition for what the planning board believes is a very good job that we're doing for taking care of people and supporting them. Not a solution to the affordable housing problem.
I understand that.
Attainable housing or anything else.
I just think the stat that you've used,
I gave you the page there, right?
I know.
And so if that's inaccurate, that's inaccurate.
Yeah. No, the stat is accurate. It's the way I don't think it adds to your argument in a favorable way. If the stat read Little Compton has zero cost burden households, then there'd be no need for affordable housing in town, and there'd be no need to have that 10%. Then I would say, we have no need for affordable housing in town because no one is cost burdened. Then yeah, we should get rid of that 10% because there's obviously no need for it. Almost 20% of our households are in need of some sort of relief. And so that's where I'm held up on.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Actually on this, and this is something that we'd like to do. Hold the matter and give us the opportunity to come to the planning board and talk about the low to moderate income housing act and the stats on that, so that I think they will sharpen up some of the issues and the planning board will be able to make a good decision based on the factors in the statute. We'd like to do that, actually.
No, we welcome, the planning board's not, planning board would like to support the citizens of Little Compton and help in the housing situation. So this was purely a response to how we've just sort of been beaten over the head about nine units and not, which implied that, at least to the planning board, we weren't taking care of our own. And we felt that we are, and we're doing a very good job.
Please give us the opportunity to
Please.
discuss the statute in detail with the planning board on this. I think it's going to clear up some of the issues that.
I'm going to make a motion that.
The proposed legislation as if it were, I agree with you. I believe it's on a fast track to approval. I think that's likely what's going to be our next set of rules. So if we look at it through that lens as well, that would be helpful.
Yeah, we already have that ready to go. We'll talk about the legislation that's making its way through this General Assembly too. I think it's going to help out Councilman Ierati Moore. I keep getting them confused. I raised some good points and we'd like to address those.
So do you want to sit in a planning board meeting and discuss?
Absolutely.
Okay,
We're
so
gonna
I'll
be
make
at the next one anyway.
I'll make a motion that the solicitor sit down in the next planning board meeting in this letter that was submitted by the planning board chairman be discussed.
Great.
Come back
And
to
come
us.
back to us
Yes.
with a resolution or future meeting to discuss.
I'd like to
I'll second that.
request that we get some assistance on, to Andrew's point, what's the makeup of our citizenry? And from a low to moderate income standpoint, and the people that are burdened, and what we do for them or don't do, and how to address that.
That'll be part of our presentation.
Thank you.
The motion is made and seconded then for the solicitor and planning board to work together to produce a document or a response that comes back to us for
Town council.
any other discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next item of business is a letter from Martina Halsey expressing concern. The solicitor also serves as a CRMC attorney. My position that we have had an explanation from the solicitor in that regard.
But may I? Just to bring out the point, because it was raised, I represent another coastal community, the town of Warren, that actually has an extensive coastline. And I've had that dual representation for the entire time with CRMC. It hasn't been a problem there. I was also the solicitor in Tiverton, same thing, no problem. So I have to say that the concerns in the letter are misplaced, just based on my experience. And I do know that I was asked about that twice during the interview process.
Right.
Anthony, it's my understanding you went to the Rhode Island Ethics for an advisory opinion. Has that opinion come in?
Not yet, no, and I'm also being advised in a belt and suspenders approach to get an opinion from the State Disciplinary Council for the legal aspects of it under the Code of Professional Responsibility beyond the Ethics Commission too.
When do you expect those results?
A couple of weeks
Thank you.
or a month.
Motion placed on file.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next is communication, a request from the Nitro Cart LLC to obtain a holiday sales and victualling license. They'll be located at Walker's Roadside Stand.
Motion to approve with all the particulars.
I'll second that, but I didn't know what this was. Nitro Bar brings all kinds of things into my mind.
I recommend.
Nitro
So,
cold brew
yeah,
coffee.
yeah, so when I looked it up, it's in fact a coffee cart, so I think that'll be okay.
So the motion's been made and seconded and also dutifully explained. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Invitation to the South Kingstown 300th Anniversary Parade.
Should that motion include meeting all state and?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I said, all the particulars. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I didn't throw the whole list out at you. I figured you'd get it.
I'll make a motion that anybody who would like to go to this function be allowed to go and then place on file.
They're so young.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to respond as
Anniversary parade.
individuals see fit and to place on file. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thanks. Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation, 2022 Municipal Summary of Waste Disposal and Recycling. This is ready for signature. It's not due for some time. However, we're going to try to get out ahead of that. It requires signatures by 1, 2, 3 people.
Correct.
Motion to approve.
To allow the town council president and others to sign
Administrator and
Whatever the
solicitor.
three are.
after review by the solicitor.
Second.
Discussion.
Been done.
All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
A letter of request from Justin Bibby, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, that the town consider signing a Human Rights Day proclamation.
Motion to approve and make a resolution.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. By way of comment, I would like your authority to edit this before I return it to you.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And so the motion that is approved is to execute it after a review, after I bring it back in the draft form. Is there a motion to place the consent calendar
So
on file?
moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
I'd just like to say one thing. I was asked,
Just,
I'd like to pull number 1 then.
okay,
It deals with a resolution about when I was asked who this goes to. The copies of this resolution will be sent to the clerks of all cities, towns in Rhode Island, and to Little Compton's members of the RI General Assembly, the Speaker of the RI House of Representatives, President of the RI Senate, and the Governor of the state of Rhode Island. So that's where that resolution went, and all other resolutions that we made. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we take that vote on? No.
No.
All in favor of the motion to place the consent calendar on file?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Payment of bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. There being no other matters before us, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Tonight?
Summary period.
This was.
You too.
Right. And you want me to do anything like that is not, okay?
No, I will strive.
He's very upset.
I don't mind. I don't mind. I mean, this is
All he is.
Actually, speeding.
Right.
Leave this off.
There's nothing to be signed on this. I don't care. Matter of. That was number 3.
We're not gonna have a gang of this time, but
no.
you figured we were all down and have everybody take a look.
Every 2 or 3 years, we do have the agreement.
I think so. There's a message in that as well.
It's like the big Mamie. If it wasn't sitting on the bottom, it'd be something.
That was a joke.